Welcome to Percussion Perspectives, a podcast by Henrik Knarborg and Håkon Steine. Each episode of Percussion Perspectives features one or more musical artists in conversation about musical education, practice, and aesthetic and sociological perspectives. I'm Henrik Knarborg and today I talk with the composer and percussionist Arnold Marinissen from the Netherlands. He has been a principal subject teacher at the Conservatorium van Amsterdam since 2008, and he was also artistic leader of the famous ensemble Slagwerk Den Haag. He really enjoys the classical percussive works of Case, etc., but at the same time he's exploring and composing new music for percussion. Today his compositions are broadly recognized and performed at festivals like Huddersfield Contemporary. I talk with him today about the perspective about being both a composer and a percussionist, what motivates him and what is important when prioritizing your time. Welcome, Arnold Marinissen. I had the pleasure of meeting you soon 5 years ago, I think, in Amsterdam. And the thing that you are both percussionist but also composes more and more as I have experienced, then I think you would be perfect to talk to here in our podcast.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure.
So, first question, is there a connecting thread or leitmotif that runs throughout your practice?
Yes, well, my practice started with, let's say 25 years of performing. Although I must say, right at the start of my professional activities, I did some composing. But I always put the results in the drawer and I thought, not sure. And then I played music by many composers, many other people. I was also involved in creation processes in a music theater setting where I would co-create music with other people for a specific purpose, for a specific context. So it was always somewhere on my mind. But then in the early 2000s, I started making little pieces that I would perform myself in my own recitals. So that is really where the two threads came together. And then at some point, someone asked me, would you like to write as a string trio? And then I thought, okay, this is a serious question because that's something else than just making music for a theater performance or just stuff that I perform myself in concert. This is like a commission. Yeah. And so then that was so there was like a common thread, but at the same time, this moment was like a dividing moment where I thought, okay, I'm now going to write pieces for the other people. And so, but it's not entirely separated because when you compose, you're also a performer because you're working on your keyboard, on your piano, you're writing things down, you're improvising, you're structuring, you're also involved with how it will be to perform this material in concert. So there is this kind of imagination. So it's not a separate thing. It's not separate, but still, practically speaking, it's a different kind of job, right?
I use your percussion when you are composing, using the instrument.
Yeah, sometimes there is output, which is soundtrack or which is percussion music. And in both cases, I would use my own instruments also, pre-record things, try things out, etc. If it's a string trio, I will just work on with pencil and paper and or with my MIDI keyboard, etc. But sometimes, yes.
What do you think when you moved on from percussion to composing? Was there something missing in the works you have played until then, or did you have any agenda for whenever you compose for percussion? Are you treading a new land, or is there anything you could say in the process of being a composer that also was a percussionist?
Yeah, I notice when I write for percussion, and I think it's fair to say that the first 5 years or so, I didn't write for percussion at all. I wrote a number of pieces for voices, vocal ensemble, vocal quintet, mixed ensemble with voice, and it actually took me a while before I took the hurdle of writing for percussion, not because I was afraid of doing so, but just because I was really keen on writing for other instruments. I had had so much exposure with percussion that I really felt like, well, I've always had a big affinity for the voice. I've always loved, well, I've done my tiny bit of singing and, as percussionist, you get to do many things, but also I did some singing and I really loved it. And originally I'm a flute player. So, an instrument involving breath is definitely something that is close to me. So that was very naturally there when I started composing. And so I just didn't have a big urge right at the beginning to write for percussion. And I knew the repertoire so well, etc. But then actually pretty soon, it just started happening. So I wrote a piece for marimba, Totem, and then more pieces came, piece for vibraphone, and then percussion duo, etc., etc. And then I felt, of course, very comfortable because you know the instrument so well. It's like if you're Liszt or Chopin, you know how your hands move along the piano keyboard. Yeah, it's comfortable. It's really comfortable, and I still feel very easy and comfortable writing for percussion, and I love it. Yeah, I love writing pitches. So I've also got a percussion trio, Glockenspiel, vibraphone, marimba, and that's pitch material. And I love writing pitches. So and I've also written stuff which are more about sound making, timbre, and I love that too. But I'm also completely happy writing for the marimba. It's just your grammatic set of bars, but I'm very happy writing for that. So. And I've done, of course, so much looking for timbres and creating special sounds as a player. And it's also close to me. I also enjoy that. But I'm equally happy writing for mallet instruments. And that was a bit of a surprise for me. Because that was never really... I loved the vibraphone especially. But that was never... I had not expected to be so fond of writing for the marimba, I must say.
But that's funny because talking to a lot of composers, it seems like the marimba is always a kind of weird area to compose for, and many has kind of aversion against it, or they really don't know exactly what to do with the instrument. So it's funny that you had the same expectation and then it changed. So what particularly do you like when writing for mallets?
Well, this piece, it's called Fleeting for a Glockenspiel, vibraphone, and marimba. I like trios because it's so... the three players are so equal. Mm. Yeah, there's no subgroup. It's not the first and the second violin and then the viola and then the cello, but you're just really equal musical partners. I like that.
It's opposite to real life, where a trio can always become troubles. But I think you're right.
That's true. Yeah.
Perfect size of a chamber ensemble somehow.
Yeah. And I love the Glockenspiel. It's an undervalued instrument. I think it's a lovely instrument. I mean, someone like Morten Feldman has explored this combination of Glockenspiel, vibraphone, and marimba for Philip Guston, this big trio piece, which it's actually a trio piece, but then flute, piano, percussion. But inside the percussion setup, there is this trio. There is vibraphone, glockenspiel, and marimba. So I love this combination. I love the three instruments. So for that reason, I really liked writing for this set of mallet instruments. But also the marimba on its own. I mean, you cannot do the same thing as on a piano. Clearly, yeah. There are many things you cannot do, so you really have to work out what you can do. Your harmonies are going to be less rich. There's no pedal. There's lots of attack, but hardly any resonance. And I mean, it's a different instrument. But, well, I've actually never really reflected on why I find it appealing to write for it, but I do. Yeah. I guess it has to do with the fact that I've that I'm a percussionist and I've played the marimba so often that I know how it feels to play it. And I know the kind of movements I like to make on the marimba. I know the marimba pieces that I really love. So there's this frame of reference, I guess, that makes a difference for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you mention some of your most significant influences, musically, personally, or otherwise?
Yeah, that's going to be a funny list. and it's very hard to decide on an order. There is none. But okay, let's go. So there's definitely John Cage on the list. So the way he philosophically looks at musicianship, the role of music in society, the functionality of a musician within a group, and actually how music works, all those things. I've experienced him when I was still in Conservatoire. In my third year, I think. He was at the Conservatoire for 2 months. And I met him later also when we played with Ives Ensemble in Italy. We worked with him. And so I've had this exposure. And it has been just mind-opening and also life-changing for me, musical life. Has been a big influence, I must say. Equally, the music by Steve Reich, I really love. It's in my vein also. And I love the rich and complex harmony. I don't think I would need to explain why Steve Reich is appealing to a percussionist. I love the rhythm, but I also love his way of dealing with harmony. I like the way he structures his works. There's so much that I love about Reich's music. But talking about rich harmony, rich, complex, but very appealing harmony, I also would need to mention Olivier Messiaen.
Of course, yeah.
So that's a bit of a wide range of influences, and there are many more. I've got one foot in for myself in performance art, like the Fluxus movements, but also Kurt Schwitter's Ursonata is very dear to me. But let's say performance art from the 1960s, yeah, Nam June Paik. There's something very appealing in that period for me.
Did you have experiences, direct experiences with the Fluxus art?
Yes, funny enough, just before we spoke, I was on the phone together with my wife, Katharina Gross, cellist. We were on the phone with Gerhard Stäbler and Kunzu Schim. They are like a performance art composers duo from Germany, and we work with them quite regularly. And we recorded 2 of their pieces last week, and we had sent them the recordings, and we were talking on the phone just now. And so we work with them quite often, and they do very beautiful things, really in the tradition of Fluxus performance art. But it's like a further development of it. But their roots are really in performance art. So yes, I've done a lot of that, and I always find that completely liberating. It's such a pleasant place to be in. It's interdisciplinary. It is many things that I like. So yes, I've got a lot of activity in that field and have had in the past. Is that enough of influences, or because there are more? There are so many influences.
We could talk all night probably about that.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting to see what people mention as the main influences, and also you didn't mention any percussionists, for instance. And of course, maybe define yourself as a composer as it is now, or could you talk a few years ago? And
yeah. Well, of course. I mean, yes. When I was in music school as a teenager, I started playing the flute when I was, I think, 9, and then when I was 12 or 13, I started a band with my brother and 2 school friends, and I was on drums, and I loved it. And then when I was 16, I think, I went to the music school, the percussion teacher in music school, and I said, I want to go to Conservatoire, but not for the flute, but for percussion. Do you think that's possible? So I had a test lesson with him, and I said, okay, let's get going. Let's see where things end up. And this was a fantastic teacher, and he actually also had a percussion ensemble, and we would play school concerts with the percussion ensemble. So I was in school, but we also played school concerts. And we played Lou Harrison, John Cage, Henry Cowell, and I was completely in love with this music. And so then I went to Conservatoire, and I discovered that those pieces that we were playing, like double music by Harrison and Cage, and first, second, and third construction. Well, actually, we didn't do the third construction in music school yet, but we did the first and second. And I discovered that this was core repertoire, core percussion ensemble repertoire, and I completely loved it. And then right after graduation, I became artistic director of percussion group The Hague and player. And we continued this. We played the Harrisons and the Cages and the Gräsern and everything, but also those pieces that I got to know when I was a teenager, and I completely loved it. So, so the percussion ensemble repertoire I've always loved a lot, and I still sometimes play it with a good percussion friend of mine in Hanover, in Germany, Stefan Meyer. We've got a group, and we will play the Gräsern or whatever. Solo percussionists, I mean, we all know the solo percussionists who are active in the field, and we all know how interesting and how active and how special they are, and the pieces they commission. And I'm very fond of that too. But I think for me, this background in percussion ensemble is very strong. It's something that really shaped me, I think.
How much did you write for percussion? What pieces? And
I've written Totem for marimba, and that is now extended to 4 movements. So it's Totem 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I've written percussion quartet parts. So it's a piece for either marimba alone or marimba with percussion quartet. And then I've written a piece for vibraphone solo, 4 gardens. I've written this piece for Glockenspiel vibraphone marimba, which is called Fleeting. I've written a percussion duo, Angle of Attack. That is the moment when an airplane lifts off. That's called the angle of attack. Yeah, so it doesn't have, it sounds like it has to do with fighting, but it doesn't. It's fighting the air. I've written a piece for 5 snare drums. And I've written a percussion sextet, Iron Velvet. So I've actually written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, yeah.
So what motivates you and drives your practice forward? I think that's a good question in these times, probably.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Commissions. So if someone, and that sounds like a very dry and matter-of-fact statement, but it's not. If someone asks you to write something, it always makes me very happy. And if I know this person, which is not always true, but is often true, then you know the group or the player of the players, you know them or him or her, and it makes it special. Oh, and I wrote actually a piece for a Penguins percussion trio from Norway. That's also a percussion trio, actually. Yeah.
And then you showed that the trios were your favorite since you.
Yes. So the fact that someone asks you, "Would you like to write a piece?" that immediately triggers for me a response in imagining what kind of piece it could be, and I almost always immediately start sketching things and. Or looking for texts or whatever, starting to conceptualize the thing. That's always a trigger. Attending concerts, listening to music, definitely. I mean, for me, making music and listening to music, attending concerts, being involved in performances, it's all linked together. So once again, that's this common thread, right? It's all linked together. I guess I would not have started composing if I had never been a performer. I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah.
For me, it's just linked. It's linked. So that always it's so often that I'm in a concert and I'm listening to the concert, but at the same time I'm thinking about the piece that I would like to write now, because it triggers things. Yeah.
And that makes actually a good lead to the next question, which is about the connection between private and professional listening. So, do you listen to the music that you compose, or do you play or compose the music you listen to? and how important is this connection or not have a connection?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I compose, I never concretely think about a specific piece that I have heard. Also, although, as I say, something might trigger something else off. But even when I conceptualize a piece and I start writing, it's always going somewhere else.
Yeah.
It never goes straight ahead, never. But of course, there are links because everything feeds you, and everything has had its influence on your musicianship and your composership. So definitely, it's completely interrelated, but not in a concrete way. Never, never. I think a piece writes itself to a certain degree. Whatever the commission is, whatever the plan is, you start working, and then it goes. And sometimes, but very rarely, it stops, and you have to reconsider. But most of the time, it just goes. Yeah.
Do you have a special time for work, or is it just whenever you feel ready for it, or how do you structure a day when you're working as a composer?
Well, I don't have the luxury Generally, I don't have the luxury except in holidays, and I'm very productive in holidays. That's simply true. Summer holidays, but also Christmas holidays. Those are the moments when I can really work without much disturbance, etc. And I love that. But during the year, I just need to bring my hours together and combine it with other activities, and I'm completely fine with that. But that means that Philip Glass once made the arrangement with himself that he would compose every morning between 10 and 1, between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. And he did that, or does that, every day. And it's a luxury, and it's of course also a great discipline. I'm not in a position to do that because my calendar is too varied for that, too flexible for that. So I just need to catch my hours, but I'm okay with it. And it just simply helps to know when the piece has to be ready. A deadline is helpful because it's not only because you have to work hard in order to catch the deadline, but also you just structure your workflow. And I need that for everything I do. And I guess most of us do. And I'm comfortable with that. So I don't have a fixed planning, and it's not like a specific time of the day is best. Not really. No.
Are there anything that you regret?
In life?
In general, yes.
Yeah, of course, many things, many smaller and bigger things that I regret, or that I would do differently if I had a second chance. But regarding my professional path, I'm very happy with everything that I've done and that has come my way. And I've been sometimes quite selective, especially more recently in prioritizing for myself the kind of things, the things that I want to focus on. And actually back to your previous question, to make sure that you've got enough time for the things that you really want to do. And because there's the risk, if you're actually quite happy doing a variety of things, that accumulates to a point where you sometimes feel, wow. And that is something that, so time management, time management is not a problem, because I actually, when I've got a duty, I will fulfill it, right? But prioritizing, there's some people prioritize when they're 17, they know this is the road, there we go. Okay. And I'm a bit different. I
guess if you were 17, you wouldn't predict what you have done, right?
No, absolutely not. But looking back, there was a logic, right? As I say, finding out when you're in Conservatoire that actually the pieces you played as a teenager are exactly the pieces that matter, and then ending up in Percussion Group Den Haag and playing the percussion ensemble repertoire, and now writing pieces for 1 to 6 percussionists and for many other instrumentations. There is a clear line for me, and sharing this love for the repertoire with students as you do. So there's a bandwidth, but there is also, for me, some clarity and also some continuity, despite some some roads that you decide to cut off at a specific point.
Yeah, I think we as percussionists, we are interested in many different areas, and we tend to spread out a lot. Also, just during the studies for the students, they have to learn so many different things that's at some point there needs to be a strategy for what to do and what not to do. And probably you have just done it in a natural way. It seems like you are very in harmony what you have done, and you have a clear idea about the line. So, but I think it's an interesting question.
It's a very interesting question. It's a question that I'm sure you do when you discuss, when you talk with your students about their plans, whether for the next exam or for their career after. It's something that you talk about a lot with people, with colleagues, with students. And I think it's important. So for some of us, the way is indeed to go to some degree with what happens, with the opportunities that you get. And some people feel really good just making sure that they develop a master plan and stick to that. It's also a personality question.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. There was an American businessman who said that whenever you have plans and you have things you want to succeed in, or that you want to have your focus in, you should write down all the things that are important to you. And then you should choose the 5 most important, and that's you should really go for. But the 25, top 25, then the 20 next after the 5 important ones are actually extremely dangerous, because that's where your focus will go first, away from the 5 that are most important for you.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. Absolutely. Yeah. But you know, those other things, like I've done curating. Yeah, I've curated 1 season for Muziekgebouw aan het IJ between 2 directors. And I've curated some festivals, but also this experience also feeds back into your own workflow. So it's not time wasted, not at all. And I think we've all, for me, sharing some of your acquired knowledge with people in the form of teaching or in the form of sharing programs, creating programs or writing texts for people, writing program notes. It's also sharing some of the stuff that you have acquired. And I think this sharing is also important for me. Composing is also sharing, but there are many ways to share the things that have come to you, and you hand them back to in whichever direction. Once a year with my wife, we do a 1-day course for music amateurs, and we work on specific repertoire. Most of the time flexible instrumentation repertoire, and it could go from Terry Riley's In C to whatever. But I mean, this is also something that we are in an environment of professionals, but stepping outside of this world of professionals sometimes and working with people who also love music but have a different kind of position in that world, I also love, and I think it's important. And it once again, it feeds back to me also.
Yeah.
So I think my list of top 5 priorities is probably closer to 10. But you're absolutely right. You have to make sure that the top 5 is not endangered. Absolutely.
But I think you're right. You can easily see connections, and when you share, you're also getting more clear about what you're actually thinking, and your own road of thoughts might get the direction that you need for it. So it makes absolutely sense for me too, the way you think it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You made once this list of most important percussion solo setup works. So you've done a lot of things in also talking about sharing.
Yeah. I've got this ever-growing list. Well, the list is still there, and it has certainly expanded in the past 5 years, and I can send you the updated version.
Oh, yes, that would be lovely.
Yeah. Last week, I was still talking with a student looking at the next setup piece to work on. And he is from Spain, and he said to me, my previous teacher in Spain handed me this piece. And then I thought, I remember it, because Josep Vicent played it, actually premiered it, but I had completely forgotten about it. So I immediately added it to the list, and this keeps happening. And also last week, a student coming back from China handed me a score of a Chinese setup piece that is brand new. So also that was added to the list, and it looks pretty nice, actually. So this list is growing and has been growing. And something that we always do a couple of times a year at the Conservatoire is just do a session of listening to a repertoire, either chamber music, percussion ensemble, but definitely always setup repertoire also. Because, knowledge of the repertoire, involvement in developing the repertoire, I think is key. Yeah, and there is of course this wonderful, relatively new piece by Rebecca Saunders, Dust, that was written for Dirk Roodbroest and Christian Dierstein. So there is also a recent repertoire that is really worth adding to the list. So I don't know how the situation is for you and your class and your students, where the focus is at the moment. But it's still true that setup repertoire is labor intensive.
Yes.
And I've always loved that. Making your setup, bringing the stuff together, being in this circle of instruments. I've always loved it, but it's labor intensive. So it's a bit of it used to be the norm, but I think the position of setup repertoire has changed a bit over time.
Of course, it depends on the focus of the musicians. I think I have a student right now who is very keen on developing new ideas and working with composers, and in that respect, it makes so much sense to have a lot of focus on setup pieces. But of course, if your main focus is on orchestral percussion and you have all those instruments to keep in best possible shape, of course, it's a lot of time to devote also for the large setup pieces.
Yeah, but also if your focus is on ensemble, mixed ensemble, that is also that's fantastic, and there's actually quite a number of students also in Amsterdam who really like that. But that is also less labor intensive. You can spread your workload a bit.
That was a tradition in Denmark in the 80s and 90s from the composer's side that the percussion parts should be really, really work intensive and taking a lot of the. I think they just loved the sounds and the ideas, and there was some ensembles with one percussionist to develop this trend that there's one percussion part, but then it's just hitting in all directions at the same time.
Yeah.
So of course it depends. I think the new trend is really most of the parts I get in the Sinfonietta is actually fairly easy to play now.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow it has maybe changed a little bit how the composers look at the percussionist role, or
that's definitely true. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, the whole approach, new music ensemble world is in flux. I think that includes thinking about instrumentation. Yeah, but this list I will make sure to send the updated version to you, and please
we'll share it through the podcast. That would make
sense. Sure. Yeah.
Very good work you have done there to gather together from all the countries, which is what you often need. You find the well-known masterpieces, but if you dive more deep, there will be a lot of diamonds hidden around in the world.
I'm actually doing a master elective for all departments, where we look at technological strategies in performing and composing. So we evaluate repertoire from the past, 70 years, but we also do hands-on sessions where we create stuff according to specific strategies. So it can be using field recordings or multi-tracking and editing, or it can involve live electronics, etc. So so this course is followed by, well, any student who would like to look into this, not necessarily being already experienced in working with electronics. Yeah.
That's funny. We have about the same elective. It's a little more specified. We call it, the English word would be rhythm in a cross aesthetic perspective. So we work right now. I'm teaching, and a colleague who is making electronic music is making techno music and things like that. So we explore the sharing of electronic approach and the acoustic approach. So, for instance, when you design sounds as an electronic musician, you have a lot of focus to create some kind of organic flow in what you're doing. And for that, they use all kind of small changes of possibilities so that the rhythm is not totally straight and all this that we would make by default.
Yes.
So, but it's very inspiring to see what they can do with that, and they get some rhythms out that would be impossible to invent as a human.
Yeah.
But then you can actually try to imitate that, and I think when you listen to the development in music the last 10 years, you can really hear that this machine learning, so to speak, has also developed how we play as humans.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, well, that's a very interesting topic here. A very interesting box to open, but I guess that's outside the frame for today.
It was really a pleasure to talk to you again, Arnold. And I'm sure many of the perspectives you shared here would be interesting for percussionists and composers as well. You've always walked on the line of crossing from each side, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for participating.
Yeah, Henrik, thanks for all the great questions, and say hi to Håkon.
I will.